Hello and welcome. Today is Tuesday, April 14th. Today would be a B day. For this video, I'm going to suggest an activity to hopefully make social distancing feel a little less like social isolation. And with that said, I want to propose that you conduct an interview. Why an interview? Well, first, it helps develop interpersonal skills, those skills that allow us to communicate with other people and better develop an understanding between them. Now, that's important for a lot of different reasons. Now, given the particular interview I'm going to suggest, you'll also hopefully develop a better ability and comfort level with talking to people who are older than you or in a position of power and authority. This is particularly important for students because I feel like many times for a lot of students, they don't take advantage of the ability to talk to their teachers and seek help, seek guidance, or seek reassurance. I think a lot of students avoid that because they feel like those conversations are difficult or maybe intimidating. If you develop those interpersonal skills and become more comfortable with it, I think you might be able to better do that when school resumes in a more traditional sense, and therefore have an easier time doing those types of communications and conversations, and you might find that you start to have more success in school. Now that's part of it. The other part, and this is very specific to what I'm going to propose, I think is a little bit more important, if not much more important. And that is, I want you to interview a family member, specifically a parent, a guardian who is older than you, right? An aunt and uncle, a grandparent if they're available. Now, we are all having to do this social distancing thing, but we're lucky it's happening in a time where we have the resources we do with technology. Right? We have the ability to do things like FaceTime, Snapchat, texting, and so forth that allow us to communicate with people who aren't even in the same room, let alone the same town as we are. And we need to take advantage of that, right? We need to take advantage of this time that we have to really get to know people and to communicate. And I say this because when I was young, I went through most of my childhood and teenage years never even stopping and thinking about the family history that I had. I come from a family wherein my father was an immigrant. He moved to America at the age of 17. And I never really stopped to think about that experience and what that must have been like. In fact, it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I really stopped and thought, well, wait a minute, what was that like for him? And when I did start to ask those questions, I learned some amazing things. And I started to regret not taking the opportunity to ask questions at a younger age, right? I learned that my father moved here at the age of 17, but he did so alone. His parents and sister had moved years before him. He decided he wanted to stay in Italy. He had no intention to coming to America. It wasn't until like 4 years after they had all moved here that he finally relented and decided to join his family in coming to America. This was something that was amazing, and it led to so many other questions. I really wish that I had the opportunity to ask my grandparents similar questions about what their experience was like coming to America. Now, there were some barriers there. My grandparents never really learned how to speak English. But by the time I had started thinking about these questions, they had also gotten to a point in age where they really weren't able to answer them even if they did. My grandfather had developed Alzheimer's, and my grandmother also started to get pretty frail. And while they did live to very old ages into their late 90s, it just wasn't possible. So I had missed that opportunity. But this is a great opportunity for others to really start doing this and start asking questions, right? So let's think about what you would ask and how you would go about doing this family interview. The first thing you want to do is try to record it in some way. Now, again, we have technology for most of us, and that makes it a little easier. I really recommend creating a digital recording of any interview you do. If you have the capability of doing that, it is so much better. And for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, it's much easier than writing everything out. But two, and this is the big one, the part that really impacts me personally, you have a record that can be played later. And, while most of my students and anyone who watches will be young and won't really think about this now, you'll really want that later on in life to be able to replay that recording. I wish now that I had a recording of some of those questions I could have asked my grandparents to play for my children so that they can hear it later. So if you can record it, that would be a wonderful thing to do. If not, obviously pen and paper will always be something that's available to you. And the first question you always want to ask when you do an interview, even if this sounds weird because it's someone you're related to, you want to ask the person to identify themselves, right? And do it very plainly and matter of fact. Hi, I am, and then they state their name, where they're from, where they're living, and how old they are. And from there, move on into your questions, right? You want to ask them about their life. You know, what was their life like when they grew up? Where did they grow up? Where are they from? What were some of the experiences that stood out to them in their childhood? What was school like for them? What was their first job like? What is their most proud achievement so far in their life? Right? Those are important questions that you want to have asked in an interview. In doing so, two things are going to happen. You're going to learn more about your family, and again, very important, you're going to develop a stronger bond. You're going to develop this connection that I think is very important in this time period. So I think this is a wonderful activity to do. Again, the older the family member or guardian you can speak to, I think is even better because, you know, this is a wonderful opportunity both for you and for them to make that connection. And two, you're going to get information that is so possibly different from your own experiences that it'll be really wonderful to learn about. So please think about this activity. Think about how you could conduct it, who you could ask about their life. You might be surprised at what you learn. I learned some amazing things in it. I learned about my grandfather, my father's father, fighting against the fascists during World War II. In Italy, when the Nazis came and occupied their home, my grandfather was in a prison camp for 3 years. I had no clue about these things. And I wish that I had the opportunity to ask him directly about those experiences before he had passed away. So again, just think about what you could learn and how you would go about this. Now, there's an actual organization called the StoryCorps Project. Story, S-T-O-R-Y, Corps, C-O-R-P-S. And if you do a search for that, you can actually listen to and read some of the stories people have done that are similar to this. They have a whole series of children interviewing their parents and grandparents. And it might be a great inspiration for you. And you can even submit your own interviews to the StoryCorps Project. And I believe they're actually stored in the National Archives. So it's something to check out. Again, I think it's a great way to build some connection, to get rid of that feeling of isolation, while also developing some useful skills. Until next time, I hope everyone is well. Be good.